Hey, it's Whitney. Welcome to the very first video of the Balanced Body series. I'm not entirely sold on that title yet. I'm having a lot of trouble coming up with a good name for this series. I was tempted to call it the Healthy Vegan Body Journey, which sounds pretty nice, but it's also kind of a mouthful, so I would love your help figuring out a name for this. If you're brand new to this series and you haven't seen the announcement video yet, let me explain it to you. I'm going to be doing a new video every Wednesday, and every week I'll be covering a new book that focuses on tactics on how to get a healthy, balanced body. So how to lose weight, sometimes how to gain weight, how to gain muscle, how to tone up your body. Basically just covering the different methodologies, the different opinions and research behind getting the body that we really want, balancing ourselves out, getting ourselves to the place that we really want to be. And I started this series because I feel like there's a lot of conflicting information out there. There's a lot of confusing information. There's so many different opinions, and I want to dig into all of them. So last week I presented you with about 20 books that I currently own. I'm going to be reading all of those, and then when I finish those, I'll move on to others. You had an opportunity to vote for which books you wanted me to feature first. Thank you so much for the tremendous feedback on that. This week I'm starting with Kris Carr's book, Crazy Sexy Diet. Next week I'll be doing the Forks Over Knives plan, and then the Starch Solution. Have them right here under a pile of stuff. These two books are coming up next. I think this one was the most requested, and then this one. I started with Crazy Sexy Diet because it was the book that I was most familiar with, and I had a shorter amount of time to cover it. But I'll be digging into Forks Over Knives starting as soon as I finish this video. So today I'll be going over all the notes that I've gathered from Crazy Sexy Diet. I'm also going to include some information from Crazy Sexy Kitchen because that's got a ton of great recipes in it. And I'm also going to be answering some of the questions that you've sent in. When you had a chance to vote, you could also send in some questions. I read through your comments on the last video. I'm going to pack this full of as much useful information for you as I possibly can. And again, we've got a lot of videos to cover. This series can continue well into spring 2016. So we're on this journey. You will have plenty of opportunities to ask your questions along the way. So what I'm going to be doing in addition to the videos each week is putting together a little guide, and you will have access to this guide when you sign up for the newsletter list that goes along with this video. So I have a 4-page guide that I'm going to be reading some notes off of tonight, but there's more than I could possibly cover in one video. So if you want to read all of my notes from Crazy Sexy Diet, sign up for the newsletter list. The link is right down below. So let's dive right into this. This book is one of my all-time favorite books in general when it comes to lifestyle, when it comes to eating well, living well. I was really blown away by this when I first read it actually at the end of 2011, but at the beginning of 2012, I did the 21-day cleanse that is included in this book, and I did a whole video series. Every single day of the cleanse, I made a new video. If you haven't seen it yet, I will link to it down below, and it should also be up at the top on that little letter I up there. Check that out when you're done watching this one if you want to learn more. And also there's a link to buy this book if you don't have it yet. I really think that this one should be on everyone's shelves. It definitely has more of a slant towards a female audience, but I think men can learn a lot from this. In fact, when I did the cleanse in 2012, I did it along with the guy that I was dating then, and he really enjoyed it, and it actually really helped him transition to the plant-based diet. So what is this all about? Let me read from my notes. I want to get the wording just right, as Kris put it. So this is a low-fat vegan program that emphasizes balancing your body's pH by eating more lush whole foods, low-glycemic fruits, raw vegetables, alkalizing green drinks, and super-powered green smoothies. Lots of it is raw, some of it is cooked. It's a health gain program that is meant to last a long lifetime. She includes that 21-day cleanse that I mentioned, and it has inspiration, affirmations, and practical tips. There are no strict meal plans, measurements, calorie counting, minute-by-minute to-do lists, weigh-ins, or repetitive info. That's absolutely true. The cleanse is unlike any other cleanse I've come across so far because it's really about empowerment. It's so positive and easy, and every day you just feel better and better. It's really great if you're transitioning to the plant-based diet for the first time, but if you're on the plant or a vegan diet and you want to get more towards the plant-based diet, which is more focused around whole foods, I highly recommend this cleanse. And it's free. You know, there are a lot of cleanses out there that you can spend a lot of money on, but this one is included in this book, and this book retails for $25 or less. It's probably less on Amazon. I'll link to that down below. You should also be able to get an ebook version of this. I'm not 100% sure, but that's an instant way to get a book as well. And yeah, I just think the cleanse is fantastic. And again, check out that video series if you want to hear my experience with that. One thing I love about Kris's positioning in this book is that she said losing weight is actually a side effect. It's not the main point. If you're overweight though, the crazy sexy diet will bring your body into balance naturally. So why does she use the term crazy sexy diet? Well, this actually starts with her journey on as a cancer survivor. She has 2 books before this one sharing her tips on how she's healed from cancer naturally, or how she's become a cancer thriver, I think is one of the terms that she uses. So she goes through all of those details, and she uses the word crazy because it's about being bold, out of the box, forward thinking, and status quo challenging. And the way that she uses sexy is that you're confident, in touch, whole, passionate, and conscious. So it's beyond our common ideas of what crazy and sexy mean, but I think it's a very appealing way of positioning it. There are so many great facts in this book, and a few of them that I want to share is approximately, at the time that this book was written, which I think was in 2011, approximately 1.6 billion adults were overweight then, and 400 million are obese. I didn't look up the updated terms or the numbers for that, but I'm sure it's somewhere along those lines, maybe even more since then. At that time also, 2/3 of Americans were overweight, and they were staying that way for their entire lives. And that's one of the huge reasons that I wanted to start this series too, is if you're struggling with feeling overweight, or if you're on the verge or are obese at this time, I think there are some practical tips that you can take, some steps that you can take to start working through that in a very healthy way, as opposed to some extreme unhealthy emotionally diet. People who store more fat around their abdominal area are at higher risk for heart disease and diabetes. And I think that's super important for me personally. Like, that's where I store most of my fat. I have very healthy arms and legs, and most of my body is in great shape, but my midsection is that trouble spot. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And, you know, while it's not a major thing for me, it's also something I think about because it can put me at risk for long-term health issues that I want to avoid. I like that Kris calls this book about, or positions this book about introducing you to your own inner MD. So you becoming your own doctor, which is something that's super relevant for me. I have learned so much about my own health by doing my research, much more so than I have by going to a doctor. So I really want to introduce you to as many resources as possible so you can find your own inner MD and figure out what's going to be best for your body. So there's so much information in here. Let me highlight some of my favorite parts of this book, some of the key points. She really focuses on the alkaline diet. And if you're unfamiliar with this, she goes into great detail. So here's a quick summary. When you decrease the amount of acidic foods that you eat, you give your body the chance to heal and repair naturally. So again, as I just mentioned, you're becoming your own inner MD, so this gives you that great opportunity to really heal. And a simple way to do that is to eat more alkaline. She recommends eating 80% alkaline food and 20% acidic. More than half of the space on your plate should be taken up by fresh and organic delights from the garden. So again, she goes into much greater detail about what that means, but alkaline, it really is going to mean whole foods as a general definition of that. And then acidic will tend to mean like the processed foods, plus things like coffee and alcohol, and certain produce can be very acidic as well. She talks a lot about your pH and the glycemic index here too. So again, I really want to refer you to that book for all the specific details, but we really want to focus in specifically on some of the weight tips for this video. She also there's one section in the book where she goes into great detail about the history of dieting in America specifically. And one thing that I found really interesting was she was talking about the low-fat craze in the 1970s, and that's really when diets came into play. So Americans haven't been dieting for that long. It's only been like the past 40 to 50 years that we've been so obsessed with dieting. And when you think about that in terms of human history, it's a very short amount of time. And she concluded is that so many people were focused on either low-fat or high-protein, low-carb diets. And she said that high-protein, low-carb diet can help you lose weight, but it can have long-term negative consequences, including inflammation, chronic digestive problems, heart disease, and cancer. So the key here is to find a diet and lifestyle that is sustainable long-term, but also not going to cause you long-term harm. You want to find something that's going to keep you balanced for your entire life. That's really what I'm working to achieve with this series. And again, that's why I love this book so much. Lastly, the last point that I want to mention before I wanted to get into some of your specific questions, she said the body heals 8 times faster when you exercise regularly. She recommends exercising for 35 minutes a day. Experts also suggest 30 minutes of strength training 2 to 3 times a week. So keep that in mind. Exercise is definitely going to be a big part of this series. So let's dive into some of your specific questions here. One person asked, how healthy are oils, nuts, and other fats? So here's Kris's perspective on that. She said, good fats assist in the absorption and transport of vitamins. They increase your metabolism and can actually help us lose weight in the process. Good fats are necessary for a strong immune system, hormone production, strengthening cell walls, joint lubrication, organic production, I don't know if I typed that in right, a healthy nervous system, and proper brain function. So she goes into detail about what she considers are good fats, and she does include some oils in there. Not everybody's going to agree. That's going to be a huge topic in this series because some people say eat oil, some people say don't eat any oils at all. Some people say you can eat some oils, but it depends on which type. So again, I recommend referring to this book to figure out what specific she recommends. And then she says bad fats, which mean saturated and partially hydrogenated or trans fats, are the hip and health busters. So in short, I think that fats can be put in a good and bad positioning, just kind of like carbohydrates are, which we're about to get into as well. So Kris, in a nutshell, would recommend eating some good fats, including oils. So somebody asked, why do we find this so difficult to stick to? And that's actually one big question that I have when it comes to weight loss is, why is it hard to lose weight? Why is it hard to stick to a diet? And Kris actually has some great points in the book about this. So number one, most diets don't work because they don't take into account all of the emotional work needed to stay on track. So again, something that she talks about in this book is the emotional side of our lifestyles and of our diets. And I think it's so important to connect with the roots of your emotional challenges. So many of us have concerns about our weight, and that can add a lot of stress to it. Some of us are ashamed of our bodies. So working through that is just as important as what we're actually doing on a day-to-day basis in terms of what we're putting on our body and how we're working out, or putting in our body and how we're working out. She also talks about carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are the starchy or sugary parts of foods. All carbs break into glucose, which is the sugar your body uses for fuel or energy. If a cell has all of the fuel that it needs for the moment, insulin carries off that extra glucose to be stored as fat. You can't lose weight as easily when there's a bunch of insulin coursing through your body. So in other words, if you're eating the wrong types of carbohydrates or perhaps too many carbohydrates, your body's going to basically turn that into fat. And that's why carbs got such a bad rap. But again, just like with fat, there's good carbohydrates and bad carbohydrates, and she goes into more detail about that in this book. She mentions that being overweight is inflammatory. So fat cells actually produce inflammation, and this is something that I've really experienced firsthand. For me, I have a lot of food sensitivities, and when I avoid the foods that I feel sensitive to, my inflammation goes down and then my whole body slims down, and that's something I've shared in a number of videos. But inflammation is huge. Inflammation can cause all sorts of long-term illnesses that we're trying to avoid. If you're trying to lose weight, alcohol will sabotage your plans. Drinking too much booze messes with your ability to know when you're full. Might sound a little bit obvious, but I think that's important to keep in mind is you're drinking empty calories when you're having alcohol. So she doesn't really say you have to cut it out entirely. She just recommends very minimally and focusing on things like wine. She also goes into detail about coffee, but I'm not going to talk about that here. Basically, her opinion is don't drink coffee. When our intestinal flora is imbalanced, we become more susceptible to digestive issues, weight gain, and a host of other things. So she goes into detail about enzymes and probiotics, so the importance of chewing your food properly, the importance of taking probiotics, eating probiotic-rich food. Balancing out your gut is super important, and the more research that I do, the more I learned about the importance of having your gut in great shape, so that is definitely key. Vitamin D deficiency can actually cause weight gain, so paying attention to that is so important. So in the summer months, or depending on where you live, getting enough sun exposure. A lot of people will recommend exposing most of your limbs, like your arms and your legs, your face and your chest area, to sunlight for about 20 minutes a day, but it all depends on where you live and what's going on with your body. So some of us might need to supplement, and that's something that you should talk about with your doctor. And lastly, she said, in modern life, you're exposed to more toxins than your body is designed to handle. Your body has to work much harder to eliminate them. And that's exactly why both Kris and I recommend eating organic foods, because you're exposing your body to less chemicals. But I also really advocate for wearing organic clothing, or clothing that isn't made with a ton of chemicals or dyes. Using non-toxic household goods, so anything that you're spraying around your home, washing your home with, laundry detergent, as I've talked about, and then also your body care. So reducing the amount of toxins in your life can actually help you with weight loss as well. Okay, somebody else asked, are the ingredients for recipes easy to find? I think so. She has a list of a few recipes at the end of this book. But if you're looking for much more in-depth recipes, I recommend her second book, or this is like technically her fourth book, Crazy Sexy Kitchen. It's got 150 recipes in here, whereas this one maybe has like 30 or something. And I will link to this book down below as well. In terms of how to find them, most of the ingredients in this book are produce-based. She'll use ingredients like tempeh and tofu, which you can find at most grocers, condiments like tahini, mustard, and miso, and then sweeteners like agave, which you can find in almost any other store, plus condiments like vegenaise, which might be a little harder to find, but these days is showing up in most markets. Some of the more challenging things that are in here that you might not see in the grocery store, you can find online, like she mentioned something called E3 Live, yakan syrup, namashoyu. If you can't find them in your store, order them online and you can probably even get a better price at them. Are the recipes easy to make? In this book, absolutely. I think most of these you can throw together in a matter of minutes. The Crazy Sexy Kitchen recipes are a little bit more in depth. She worked with Chad Sarno, who is more on the gourmet eating type of style, but once you get into the habit of it, they become very easy. Do they require a ton of ingredients? Most of them, no. So I would say between 5 to 10 ingredients, but they're very, very low price. So while I was getting back into the rhythm of eating this way, I went shopping at Whole Foods and gathered several days worth of food to make great recipes. I think I spent $60 and I still have things left over. So it depends on what you think is expensive. I mean, I was making a ton of green juice. I was making pasta with pesto sauce. I was making stuff with tahini. I got a jar of tahini that's going to last me a while. So, some of these ingredients are not just going to be used one time. So it all depends on how much you want to spend and how much you want to get. How does the food look? Well, I think she doesn't have any photos of the food in Crazy Sexy Diet, but she does have a ton in Crazy Sexy Kitchen. And I think they're all very vibrant looking. Let's see. Oh, lots of greens, lots of different colors. So here's one of my favorites. This kale salad right here is absolutely gorgeous. So I think that they look absolutely beautiful, but it all depends on how you want to make them. How does the food taste? Very flavorful. I've made green juices, I've made different salads, I've made all sorts of different entrees and desserts. They're very, very nice. I like them a lot. One person asked, how do I avoid cravings? She has a whole section in here, and let me go through that real quick for you. So number one, have a snack that's high in protein and some fat, such as nuts, seeds, and avocado. Sip a hot herbal tea with a bit of agave or stevia. Get a satisfying boost from a zesty lemonade made with a couple of freshly squeezed lemon, stevia, and mint or strawberry. Juice up a nutrient-packed green drink or smoothie. Enjoy a rice cake with almond butter or a baked sweet potato. Go for a small piece of dark chocolate. Sip some almond milk with cocoa and stevia. Snack on a cup full of low-glycemic fruit salad like pears, apples, and berries. Floss, brush, and gargle with a natural mouthwash, and change your environment. Go for a walk, call a friend, take a bubble bath, cuddle with your pet. So there's lots of ways to kind of distract yourself and to eat things that will give your body some nutrients and take your mind off any of the crazy cravings that you're having. One person mentioned that she or he didn't have time or money to go raw, so she or he didn't see it as an option. Kris goes into detail a bit about that in this book. She suggests doing things like buying directly from a farm, joining a CSA program, going to the farmer's market, growing your own food, buying frozen vegetables, buying in bulk. If you're looking for more tips on this, I have a whole book about how to eat healthy, organic, vegan food on a budget. I found that I can eat completely organic for under $5 a day, and I outline every single tip I've ever found in the ebook. I've linked to it down below. It's not specifically about raw food, but it can definitely apply. Kris says in here that you can eat extremely well for less than what somebody might spend at McDonald's, and I think that's totally possible. The key with low-cost raw food is to eat more produce, eat less dehydrated food, eat less nuts. Anything that you would buy in a package is going to be a lot more expensive, but most produce is very, very affordable, especially when you get it at places like the farmer's market. And lastly, a bunch of you recommended that I add Eat to Live by Joel Fuhrman to the list, and I definitely will. I don't own it yet, so the list that I provided is only the books that I have on hand, but as I mentioned, once I complete those books, I will be moving on to others. It's definitely going to start to get expensive once I start reading other books, unless I get them from the library, actually. So maybe I will start doing that and planning for that. So speaking of which, that is the end of this video, and I am going to start working on the next one, which is all about the Forks Over Knives plan. If you want to follow along with me, the link is down below. I would love for you to send in any questions that you have, so there's a link down below where you can sign up for the newsletter and add in your questions. You can also comment here on the video anything that you would like me to cover, any questions you have, and again, those will be taken into account along this whole journey. So whatever I can do to support you, I'm going to do my very best. I hope you enjoyed this summary of Crazy Sexy Diet. I would love to hear your opinion on this book, your experience with this book, and any of Kris Carr's resources. She has a phenomenal newsletter and website and videos. There's so much information if you just look her up, and she is like one of the sweetest vegan personalities, in my opinion. Thank you so much for watching and coming along with this journey. I'm so excited. And I also should say that just by following the guidance of this book for less than a week, I feel great. I started juicing again. I started eating cleaner. I started thinking about life differently. And she has all sorts of tips like dry brushing and taking baths and infrared saunas. All of these little things that you can start to sprinkle in your life that can boost the way that you feel. And so I feel great. I'm absolutely thrilled. Thank you for all the positive support on this series. I will see you next Wednesday. Until then, best of luck to you with feeling your very best.